Jonathan, let me bring you in. As mentioned, in Glen Allen, Virginia, Paul Ryan talking a lot, obviously, about jobs, the most important issue. I think anybody would agree with that. But he did not discuss Medicare. What do you make of this as we end this week? And obviously, his name is associated now with this battle over Medicare.
Well, we talked about Medicare for about a week straight, and I think that the Romney campaign, Paul Ryan, everybody who's out there on the campaign trail, they're listening to folks, and what folks are telling them is that the #1 issue is jobs, the #2 issue is the economy, and then Medicare and these entitlement things are important, but what they're focused on is bringing their message forward to the American people about how they're going to create jobs and turn the economy around.
What's interesting, you say that there's a new poll out from the Kaiser Family Foundation, and Medicare ranks first in voters' minds and considerably above the president's health care overhaul. This information from the Kaiser Foundation. So there's been no shortage of talking about Obamacare as it's referred to, but here you have the new polling numbers that say people do care about Medicare and want to talk about this.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, if you ask people, do they care about Medicare? Do they care about the quality of life issues that come around with health care? Of course, people are going to say that. But I think that they've been talking about Medicare for the last 5 days. And at some point, you know, the campaign has to pivot and talk about something else. And what they really want to be talking about is the economy and their plan for turning the economy around.
So, Governor Rendell, let me bring you in. If that's the strategy, it's not working. Obviously, the headlines are about Medicare. The other headline is this 13% tax that Mitt Romney revealed yesterday that he paid over the past decade. We know that this tongue-in-cheek offer from the Obama campaign of if you show us, we will leave you alone came down today, but Governor Romney is still refusing here. Is the strategy to keep him on his heels about taxes and such working here?
Well, anytime the discussion turns to anything other than the economy, that's a plus for the Obama campaign. And Medicare has been handled brutally badly by Romney Ryan. To think that they didn't get it straight before they announced Ryan as the vice presidential candidate, what the answer was going to be to, well, is it Ryan's budget? Do you agree with every part of it? Or is your Medicare different? Governor Romney says, I'm going to take that $718 billion back, but Representative Ryan keeps it in his budget. They never straightened out plans like that. It's unbelievably incompetent, and they're paying for it. And look, I think Medicare is a big issue, particularly in swing states of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Florida, states that have a high proportion of senior citizen voters. And I think it's just terrible news for the campaign, the Romney-Ryan campaign, that this has exploded in their face.
Jonathan, I see you nodding your head. I don't know if you're agreeing with what Governor Rendell said, but here you have a situation. Let's talk about the two of them. The answer to taxes. It seems that Romney has stumbled through before the Olympics. People thought, okay, after we'd see a more concise answer. Yesterday, he revealed his 13%. That opens up a whole nother line of questions about taxes. And then to Governor Rendell's point, this issue of Medicare, whose plan is the plan? First, Governor Romney said, I've got my own plan, my own ideas. And then yesterday, he said their plans were near identical.
Well, no, what I was nodding at actually was when he said that a day that they're not talking about the economy, the Obama campaign is happy. And the biggest news today actually is the Department of Labor report that the unemployment rate went up in 44 states. Almost like clockwork, the Obama campaign sent a letter to the Romney campaign about tax returns. They did this, actually the last time that they did a tax return push was on July 9th. It was 4 days after the last jobs report. It's almost like clockwork. They don't want to talk about the economy. They want to find anything that they can do to not talk about the economy, and that's what happened today.
So, Governor Rendell, how do you reply to that?
Well, I think he's right about where the campaign wants to be centered. But look, I mean, the facts couldn't be more clear. When President Obama became president, the economy was so bad that we were losing 750,000 jobs a month. So last month we gained 180,000 jobs. That's awful decent progress. It's not good enough, and we all acknowledge that. But certainly they've turned it around. They've had 29 consecutive months of private sector job growth, 4.5 million private sector jobs created. Again, not enough, and everyone concedes that. But I think Americans are pretty smart. They know what the president inherited, they know where we are today, and they know that there's been progress. Again, not enough progress, but I think economists say that had the Republicans in Congress, including Representative Ryan, voted for the president's jobs bill that he put before them in October, we would have had 1 million new jobs in infrastructure alone and maybe 2 million new jobs created by that jobs bill, which was turned down. Even though Republicans approved of every single of it in the past, it was turned down purely for politics. They didn't want to give the president a win.
And Peter, I'll get you in, but Jonathan, to Governor Rendell's point, just bringing up the 787 billion stimulus. We've got this new conflict from Paul Ryan. He says that he fought tooth and nail against the stimulus, but records show he asked for money for 2 different companies, funds for 2 different companies. So does that mean he supported the stimulus or not? How do you reconcile this?
He voted against it. And then there's always a tension with members of Congress. You vote against something. Does that mean that you want to keep your district from getting any of the money? I don't know the circumstances. It's almost like when a Democrat votes against a tax cut and then they go ahead and they take the tax cut. Are they hypocritical for doing that? I kind of see some similarities with that line of logic.
But specifically, he says that he did not ask for money. That's what he said. And now records show he did. He asked for money for 2 companies.
And Tamron, if he had read my book, Nation of Wusses, I had a top 10 reasons the politicians are wusses. The #1 reason was, in fact, when they vote against something and then take the benefits of it or go to a ribbon cutting. And I mentioned Representative Ryan's sending those letters in my book. Had he read my book, he never would have given the wrong answer.
He would have known his answer. He would have known what he did. Jonathan, I've got to go back, not to put you on the hot seat here, but again, he says he did not make these requests, and records show he was vetted by the Romney campaign. Did this not come up?
Look, I don't know the facts of that case. Having worked on the Hill, I've run a Washington, D.C. office for a member of Congress. I think a lot of stuff does go on at the staff level that maybe he didn't know about. Again, not knowing the facts of the case, I think it's entirely plausible that he maybe didn't know what the staff. He didn't
read the letter. He signed the letter, Jonathan. He didn't read it?
Listen, I didn't read it, and I don't know enough about the case to really talk about it.
Paul Ryan did not sign a letter that he doesn't read.
All right, Peter, let me bring you in. It's not just the issue of the stimulus. It's China's currency manipulation. We learned that Paul Ryan actually voted against a tooth and House bill that would have cracked down on China's currency manipulation. Very different than what he is saying on the campaign trail. This whole vetting of Paul Ryan now by the media extends past Medicare.
Well, the gist is both sides are trying to accomplish with the other, sort of knocking them off their perch, as it were. The Romney folks are trying to knock Obama's likability numbers down. Obviously, that's one of his biggest assets on the campaign trail. I was there with Mitt Romney over the course of this bus tour. Some of the harshest language we have heard from him and from his advisors, continuing to try to chip away at President Obama. Meanwhile, the re-election team for the president going after Paul Ryan to try to characterize him as sort of a politician like all the others who says one thing and does something differently. But just to conclude the conversation you were having about taxes, just to get back to that, and while we talk about the 13.6 or 13.9% number, I think the real issue that reporters are going to look forward to asking Mitt Romney when they see him next is, does this sort of reveal what we can expect from a Romney presidency, and that he's been really only willing to give a bare minimum in terms of taxes. There's a political issue, not a legal issue, but only a bare minimum in terms of taxes, in terms of bundlers, in terms of meetings, and in terms of transparency. Is that what Americans should expect to hear from Mitt Romney if he were to become president?
But Peter, in all fairness, and you've been covering the Romney campaign, I know this question is not new. It has been asked for many days and weeks now regarding the transparency, not just of the candidate running for president, but even when he was governor of Massachusetts, we know there were questions about what kind of information of residency and even taxes back then. So the question of how transparent or what kind of presidency he would run if he were to go on to win, those are questions that have been out there and he still hasn't answered.
Yeah, that's what Americans are going to have to decide for themselves if they're satisfied with the things that they've heard right now. It's very clear the Romney family has decided, not just his advisors, but Mitt Romney and his wife Ann have said, you know what, enough is enough. We're not going to put out any more taxes. Americans now have to decide, and I think we'll be forced to make this choice because the Romney folks are not going to give them any more information. They are giving them, even if it does create another news cycle or multiple news cycles going forward, whether they think that this is a presidency or would be an administration that they'd be comfortable with.
Jonathan, Peter, and Governor Rendell, thank you all for joining me. Great pleasure to have you all on this Friday. I think I have the most handsome panel of the day. And that's not me flirting. That's just me being honest. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Coming up, new details coming in about the deaths of 2 American special